5-year-old's tricky. I'm going to assume you're 12.
Okay, fair enough.
Our putters are balanced in a way that has them sitting on the shaft, where their biased position is towards the target, and it
Okay.
stays there throughout the stroke. So, in other words, put most simply, if you're not manipulating and twisting the shaft and twisting the putter head on your own, gravity actually wants this putter head to arrive back at square.
What is up, everybody? How you living? Special edition, no putts given. The only man in the industry with better hair than me in high school, Sam Hahn, Lab Golf. We're going to get into all questions, things that people asked about Lab Golf. But before we do that, Sam, what's up, man? How you living?
Oh, I'm feeling pretty good. We got the weather's finally turned for the better around here. The greens have healed, and they are running fast and firm out here at Emerald Valley. So things are real good.
And when greens are fast and firm, you need a putter to help you challenge and navigate those difficult circumstances, which is what we're going to talk about. For those of you that don't know, Sam, I guess you're not a big title guy. I'm not either, but you are the owner, operator, world beater of Lab Golf. The buck
I'm the
stops
CEO.
with you.
I am the CEO of L.A.B Golf and have been now for almost 7 years.
Like I said, I got a bunch of questions from people, and here's one that came in from one of our readers: is just how this climb feels really precipitous, like an overnight sensation, but it really isn't. What have the last 2 to 3 years been like? And then we're going to get into some of the putter stuff, but it has to have just been like, have you slept in the last 6 years?
Off and on, there's periods where things are smooth, and I have the luxury of working with the most amazing team ever. I mean, we really. I know people say this about all the people they work with, but I legitimately um, feel that this team here at L.A.B is better than any in the industry, and so. That helps. We all hold each other up quite a bit, and we're all, health and sanity conscious. So when we see one of us slipping into the ether of insanity, we do our best to make sure that they come back down, myself included. And but yeah, it's been crazy. It's totally crazy. And yeah, as far as kind of what the rise of L.A.B Golf might feel like. It's all a matter of perspective. I totally understand how, if you're just an everyday golfer and a weekend warrior and whatever, and, there was basically, 2 or 3 putter companies in the world, and now all of a sudden there's this L.A.B craziness everywhere. It probably seems like overnight, but yeah, from where we're sitting, it's been, I can't believe it's only been 7 years. I mean, it feels like a lifetime that we've all been grinding over this. So, but no, we're doing good. We're having a lot of fun for the most part. Sometimes a little stressed out, but I wouldn't trade my life for anything.
No, that's awesome. And like I said, some people might be hearing about Lab Golf for the first time. Lab stands for lie angle balanced or lie angle balancing. It's not lab like my dog. I have a lab that loves to take pictures with your putters. It's a lab. Explain that to me like I'm 5. Because like I said, for a long time, maybe 1 or 2 putter companies, people heard a lot about things like, oh, this has toe hang, this doesn't, da-da-da-da-da. And then people throw out all these terms, zero torque, no torque, da-da-da-da-da. Like I'm a 5-year-old. What the hell is lie angle balancing?
5-year-old's tricky. I'm going to assume you're 12.
Okay, fair enough.
But so yes, I'm going to assume that anybody listening has heard the terms face balanced and toe hang before.
Okay.
And I guess we're on. We got some visual here, so I will explain for those of you who don't know. So this is a toe hang putter.
Yep.
And that's because the toes are hanging.
Yep.
Then a face balanced putter. I don't think I have one in here. A face balanced putter.
Sure,
would
I have
sit
one
like
hanging
this,
up on my wall. Yeah, there you go. If it were just to sit, yeah,
would sit face up. And this one in particular is a very frustrating term because the face is not balanced to anything but the sky. And given that we're not moving the ball straight up and down, the sky, pointing straight up in the air is as arbitrary as 15 degrees this way or 15 degrees this way. It doesn't actually do anything for your putting stroke. Well, that's not true. It does something. It doesn't necessarily do good things for your putting stroke.
Right.
So our putters are balanced in a way that has them sitting on the shaft, where their biased position is towards the target, and it
Okay.
stays there throughout the stroke. So, in other words, put most simply, if you're not manipulating and twisting the shaft and twisting the putter head on your own, gravity actually wants this putter head to arrive back at square, whereas a face balance putter or a toe hang putter is flip flopping anywhere but square. You have to keep it there. So, what lie angle balancing does for 12-year-old purposes is it helps keep the putter face square all by itself.
And go to the lie angle part because people know, and they may be familiar with that term, but typically they're more familiar with lie angle as it accounts or as it plays a role in like an iron fitting. Like, hey, I need to go
Sure.
a degree upright. I'm too flat. I'm too steep. Da 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 da. We talk about lie angle again. Basically, if you have a club and it's sitting on the ground and you have a shaft, right,
Right.
and this
So,
angle might be
yeah, so here's
61 degrees, 62 degrees in a 7 iron, 8 iron.
right.
But how does that? So when you're saying it's lie angle balanced, my lie angle for my putter may not be the same as yours.
Oh, for sure. And in fact, you'll see a lot more variance in people's optimal lie angles in a putter than you will in an iron. I mean, we've fit putters as flat as 61 degrees, and as upright as the legal limit at 79 degrees. So, there's a
So
huge
it's
variance. So
18
just for
degrees.
those, oh yeah,
So
and for
so
those
say that.
watching,
So
so
some
here's
people
here's
go
the
as
top line
flat
of the
as
putter.
61.
Here's the top line of the putter, and the angle between the top line of the putter and this shaft is the lie angle. So, if the lie angle was flat, the shaft would be more this way. If it was
Mm-hmm.
upright, it would be more this way.
Yep. Yep.
And so when we say lie angle balance, so this head with these screws on the bottom and these screws here on the top line is balanced to this specific lie angle. If I was to, and you can't bend these, but let's say I could, if I was to bend this flat, this putter would no longer be balanced. It's still going to have less torque than most anything else you're going to use,
Right.
but it's not
But it won't
perfectly
be in
balanced.
balance.
Correct. So yeah, so we balance each putter, and every component on the putter makes a difference in the way that it balances. The grip will change the way it balances. The type of shaft that we use will change the way it balances. The weight, the length, every single component has an impact on balancing the putter. If you change one of them, you're going to change the way the putter balances. Again, a grip change, for instance, we get a get that question a lot. Will
That
it
was going to
change
be
the
one of the
balance?
questions I had. I say, hey, what if I want to change my grip? Does that
Right.
throw everything off?
So when we balance them, ideally the toe is straight up in the air like this, and there's
Mm-hmm.
more to it than just being toe up. There's other toe up putters out there. You can put a shitload of weight on the heel down here, and the toe's going to go up. So, but
Right.
it's just a basic frame of reference. If you were to change the grip, say from the standard on a link putter, from the standard rubber grip that we use, and put say a super stroke on it, you're going to see a variance of like that. You're going to see a variance of 2, 3, 4 degrees at most, and then in motion you're going to see it, like if it was in a revealer, where with ours it just stays perfectly square. You're going to,
Mm-hmm.
well, it doesn't look square from that close up. Stays square. You'll start to see it do some swimming in the revealer like this. But again, this putter in the revealer, it's just going to go like that. I mean, it's going to flip and flop all over the place. Change the grip, and yes, it's going to knock the balance ever so slightly, imperceptible to most. More experienced players and people who screw around with our putters a lot, they can start to feel it. I can certainly feel it. But yeah, it's not the biggest deal in the world. If you change your grip and you like it better and it's performing better, stick with it. If you change the grip and you like the feel, but you pretty sure you can feel some twisting and some resistance, we have a service where you can send it back and have it rebalanced to the new grip.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess part of what's interesting there is, like I said, every component on the club itself plays a role in being it being balanced. It kind of sounds like number one, most important, the weight distribution, right? So when you see all these weights on the bottom or different places, those weights obviously have different mass to them, etc. Do not touch those people. Do not change those.
Oh,
Do not
don't
try to
touch them.
mess with those. That will absolutely Jimmy jangle the whole operation, right? I
It will,
mean,
and I know it's frustrating. Like we have a lot of people that get the putter. So the weight of the putter head is kind of a different animal with us. The absence of torque generally makes the putter feel lighter than it actually is. So when people first get it, they're like, "Oh, this feels so light. I'd like to add some weight."
uh-huh.
The advice is keep it where it's at for a few more weeks and see if you can get used to it. Lighten up the grip pressure a little bit and see if it takes. If not, we can add weight, but we can't sell weight kits. And people are kind of used to that now, where a lot of these putters
Yeah.
offer, these things that you can go buy and stick them in, and they're frustrated that they got to send it back to us and wait 2 weeks and da 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 da. The reason is that if you change the weight, you change the balance. And like changing a grip is a pretty negligible thing. If I was to take, the 2 gram weights out of wherever there's 2 gram weights and put 14s in, it's not even close to balance. Now it has just as much torque as um,
Yeah, you've
you know,
defeated
a,
the entire purpose.
correct, correct.
How about the shaft? So it kind of seems like in order, right? Head weights, those designs, change anything there, you're going to destroy the whole thing. Putter grip, not a big deal in general. Like I said, imperceptible to most. If you find a grip that you like a lot better, whatever, try it, see how it goes. The shaft itself, is that kind of in between those two in terms of, because you get somebody go, ooh, I want a stability shaft now. I heard about this, I heard about that, and I want to put one of those on. I want to try that. Is that.
The shaft is going to generally. The problem is you don't know until you grab the shaft. But I didn't know this before I got in the industry and before we really had some trouble balancing some putters. There are virtually no shafts out there that are perfectly straight and perfectly round. We've developed a really good partnership with TPT because
Yep.
they are by far the straightest and roundest shafts in the game.
Mm-hmm.
They have a totally different process in making their shafts that has the concentricity like through the roof relative to other companies. So, but if you don't have one of those, um, and yeah, stability shaft is a great example. We get that question all the time. Can I chop the top half of the shaft on and put a stability shaft on it? Um, that's going to have a way bigger impact on the balance than a grip would. I know it sounds crazy because it seems like it's on axis and whatever,
It's straight.
but
I'm
just
not
the
changing.
time
Yeah, like, yeah.
exactly. But the tiniest bit of what's called run out, curve,
Mm-hmm.
completely changes the putter. And so, yeah, we strongly advise people not change the shaft on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and we're happy to do it. All of the different aftermarket shafts. We love offering all the shafts that we do. And it's a lot of fun, and it absolutely changes the way that they feel and perform and all of that. But it's definitely better if you
Yeah.
let us do it so we can rebalance it and give you the most optimal performance. Because you might put a stability shaft on it and you love the feel, and all of a sudden you start missing putts one way or another. It's got nothing to do with the shaft. It's just through the putter.
Yeah, it's a system, right? I mean,
Yep,
people tend to think of putters not as a system, but oh, it's a head, But this really operates as a
that's a
system, and
that's a
you change
great way
any
to put
part of
it.
that, you're going to change the output. Either very marginally, like said, a grip, okay, fine, not a big deal generally, but anything else, you've changed the recipe, and change the
100%.
recipe, you get
And
a
it
you
and
get a
it's
bad
frustrating
tasting
for people
cake.
because like we've gotten so used to adjustability and customization, that we've got these drivers. All you need is a wrench, and you undo it, and you can make it however you want it. And it's absolutely our hope and our intent um, to continue to develop the technology that people might have more flexibility in the way that they're able to screw around with these things at home. I love to tinker, and I would love to be. I'm lucky I got a whole factory here
Yeah,
at my
you get to
disposal
tinker a
whenever I
lot.
try
Yeah.
something new. But yeah, if I was just a customer, I'd be frustrated too sometimes that I can't just play my games with my putter. But
Mm-hmm.
it is a system and does need to be treated accordingly to get the best out
Yeah.
of it.
All right, so let's talk putter selection stuff. So let's say I know nothing about lab putters. Let's say maybe I hear this podcast first time. I go, oh man, that sounds totally different. That sounds like me. We're going to talk about who might benefit from a lab putter here in a minute, but I'm going to come to your website, check it out. Questions I get: can I demo one? How do I actually get fit for one of these things? And how do I know which model might be best for me based on like what I know isn't good about, like, if I'm like, man, my distance control sucks. I'm a terrible, if I could tell you things I do well putting, things I don't do well, I come to your site. How do I figure out where to go from there?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's a lot simpler than it is with kind of other putter selections. And I want to make a disclaimer before I get too deep into this. I know when I talk about these putters, I sound like I'm saying that they're the second coming of Jesus. They are incredible. The technology is profound. Um, but it's still a putter, and you still got to make a stroke, and you still got to make a putt. I just want, yeah, like I said before, just a little disclaimer to know that some of the stuff I'm going to say to answer these questions may sound like it's this cure-all magic bullet. It's really helpful. But yeah,
We have
so
had some people say they've had a deeply religious experience, though, when switching to the putter.
I
So,
certainly did.
so like, I'm just throwing that out there. Like,
um, Maybe it's not the God, but a God. No.
okay, all right. We
Uh,
got polytheism going on here, multiple deities, all that kind of stuff. So
exactly.
so I come and say I want to get fit, I want to figure this out. Are there putters that are better for people with certain maladies, certain issues, and how do they navigate
So,
that to figure out what is the right one for them?
historically, you go to a putter fitting, and there's a bunch of different shapes. There's a bunch of different hosel and neck configurations. Um, and you jump on some platform, whether it's Quintic or Sandputt Lab or something like that, and it tells you which of those different arrangements. And by the way, those arrangements, the thing that they change is the torque profile. So
Hmm.
if you go from a flow neck to a plumber's neck, the way that the putter is trying to twist is slightly different. Everybody has a different reaction to how those putters twist. And somewhere in there, for at least that day, there'll be one that's a little bit easier for you to control than others. In our case, we've removed that single variable completely.
Hmm.
So all of our putters have the exact same torque profile, which is that they are balanced in plane, and balanced to be going where you're trying to hit the ball. So now what's left is shape, and a lot of that is about comfort. However, I when I first got the putter, like I was a total putter snob, and I had lots of really fancy, Camerons and 8802 shaped putters and Napas and all
They
this
look great
stuff.
hanging on a wall, I bet.
Yeah, they look awesome, and I loved looking down at them when I was putting. I still do. I still enjoy the look of some of those classic putters and everything, but they just don't perform. Choosing one you like to look at, I appreciate for some people is important. My own experience dictates that it's not as important as you think. It's important for about the first 3 minutes. And then as soon as you start seeing the ball go in the middle of the hole over and over and over again,
Right.
our marketing guy Zach, for one of our ads, put out there something I still say all the time, which is beauty is what makes the ball go in the hole. So to that end, I used to always recommend the directed force, the original, the directed force 2.1. The technology that we employ is the most obvious with it. The huge footprint really, like, you can't miss that it's a different feeling in motion. The second you pull one of those back, it just feels different in motion, period. And then the extra size makes it really forgiving. So now you have a putter that's really working hard to stay square, that's extraordinarily consistent across the face, and you know, it's technologically pretty much as good as it gets. Um, Before the introduction of the DF3 a few months ago, The next, was going to, from a forgiveness standpoint, was going to be the Mes Max, which I totally understand for a lot of people is a little easier on the eyes. It's sort of that fang shape and
Yeah,
something
it's a
that
lot of
people are kind of used
squares. It's a
to.
lot
And
of straight, perpendicular lines.
yeah, it looks like the Tesla truck, I'm told. So,
With
you know,
fewer recalls. That'll be good.
um, yes, knock on wood with fewer recalls. But and then the Mes One is a little smaller, and then the Link is a blade. It's a very, relatively speaking to our other models, a very traditional looking putter. It's a heel toe weighted putter, like a answer style with stepped corners, and it's center shafted. It's a tiny bit onset. Um, but the further that you go into traditional, the less forgiving and the less obvious the technology becomes. So, um, with Link, for instance, which is kind of the smallest footprint that we have, or the original Mes One, it's just more subtle. They still work great, and I respect that confidence is important, and you want to look down at something you feel confident on. So the short answer is whatever one you want. You're not going to see huge performance differences from putter to putter. When you get into Link and Mes One, if you're a really high handicapper and really struggle to strike it near the center of the face, I'd probably stay away from Link and Mes One. The other three will be perfectly good. I now, as my default answer, do recommend DF3, the newest one, and
Yeah.
obviously, we want to get behind our new products and all that. But for those that have been following along with my journey with Lab and all of the stuff, know that like even with Mes Max, with Link, I never switched away from the 2.1. The DF3 is the first time that I have. It's still got virtually the same amount of forgiveness and stability as the 2.1. It feels like it's on rails like the 2.1, in motion. The sound is so much nicer.
It is.
The
Yep.
shaft is, a little closer to the face, so it kind of feels a little less odd. Um, and then, for as much as I was vehemently opposed to designing putters around a ball scoop, I do very much enjoy the
Hey,
little the little ball
it's
picker.
you never know, right? I mean, when you can work it in there and that, and so yeah, I mean, I think it's like I said, it's one of those things. There aren't necessarily going to be a ton of things to demo, but it really, you know, it doesn't take the same amount of process because you've eliminated a huge variable. So it really legitimately does then come down to, hey, what features do I want? You can customize stuff on the site, different colors, alignment lines, types of shafts, blah, blah, blah. And you can kind of do those throughout. So it is more like, hey, you kind of almost have to get that traditional fitting methodology, compartmentalize it, put it over here, and say, okay, I can really make decisions based on these factors now. I don't have to
100%.
think as much about these factors.
Absolutely. Yeah, the old narrative around, gate and arc requiring you to have this putter or that putter, it just doesn't apply. And for the most part, I kind of appreciate, a lot of that theory around fitting for traditional putters, but also kind of not really. Like my experience with toe hang was quite the opposite as what the narrative would have you believe. I when I was using toe hang putters, my face to path um, was much small. My face to path ratio was much smaller, and the depth of my arc was much smaller. It was when I started using face balance putters is when I really started having a bunch of face rotation. So, but yeah, all that stuff is kind of out the window. One of the really interesting things, I was actually just talking with somebody about this online. Um, and we get that question all the time. The assumption is, because we're talking about, square. The assumption is that the putter really only works for people with a, quote unquote straight back, straight through stroke. Um, uh, and uh, in general, anybody's going to putt better with less depth to their arc and face rotation, because ball position won't be as impactful, and the longer the face is square, the better and all. But people who come and start using our putters, who do have fairly deep arcs and a lot of face rotation, by doing nothing other than just using the putter for a few weeks, They come back, and the depth of arc has shallowed out, and the face to path ratio has reduced itself. And it's because we do react to the instrument in our hands. Obviously, we react to the instrument in our hands. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any reason to fit, from toe hang to face balance, right? We know that the torque profile does affect the way that we move these putters. When you remove torque on the face axis, things just start to happen all on their own. It just gets a little easier.
And then there's a whole different beast. Here's a question. Musical medicine and light lime time. These are from the forum. Asked us questions around, hey, and this one is I guess it's currently being made. He goes, I ordered a broomstick and it's on the way. Give me some tips and tricks. What do, because like I said, there can be at times a learning curve. I've told people my experience with lab putters was that after a day or two, that wasn't a fair assessment for me. I had to give it some time, get through it. But if you do that, a lot of people tend to then stick with it and say, hey,
Oh,
once you
totally.
adjust to it, now I can't go back to something else. But this is saying, okay, I ordered a broomstick, which is like a whole different world, and I totally blame you guys for this entirely because of Adam Scott and others on tour saying,
Right.
hey, look, now everybody wants to order a broomstick, but give us some advice. If you do want to order one of these, this person did, what do I need to know? What should I do? What should I not do? And how do I navigate this thing? Because it looks cool, but how do I even use one? How do I grip it?
Right.
What do I do with this thing?
Well, you brought up kind of, you got his question, then you brought up, kind of an interesting point I want to touch on. It's just kind of that adjustment period. And I have a confession to make. So,
Uh
if you've
oh.
heard any of the podcasts and all the the stories I've told, as the story goes, my instructor here, Bob Duncan, got involved with Directed Force, is what the company was called at the time. Asked me to try the putter, um, and I went out and I played 7 holes. I one putted all 7 greens, and truly, this is not an exaggeration. I made about 150 feet worth of putts in 7 holes. It was just absolutely
It
absurd.
was religious. You had a
The
religious
confession that
experience.
I have, that I do generally leave out of the story, is that I then ordered my own putter. I had it delivered to a tournament that I was playing, and I had almost 40 putts both days. It was like the worst putting experience of my entire life for the next 2 weeks. And at the time, I was playing a lot of golf. I was playing almost every day, and I was so stubborn because I'd already told all my friends that this was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'd spent $400 on an infomercial looking product that nobody had ever seen before, and I felt like an ass. So, because I wanted to like back up my assertion that this was, the most profound invention in golf in 60 years, I had to grind it out. And what I learned, and this is, what I want people who might struggle, like it sounds like you did at first. It is a different thing. Every putter you've ever used before, you need to keep it square. You need to manipulate the face in order to keep it square. With our putters, you're just letting it stay square. So it's a bit of a different mode. The small, supercomputer nerves in your fingers and everything do need, in some cases, a minute to adjust. This is why it's taken us so long to have any success out on tour, is that a tour player is a master manipulator. They are so good at manipulating the faces to stay square. They practice all the time, they calibrate all the time, and they don't love a random dude from Eugene, Oregon saying this technology is better. And by the way, you have to change what you're doing. Um, yeah, you do have to change a little bit, but the changes are easy. They're easier. Like it's mostly unlearning. It's not relearning. It's actually a more natural motion when you get used to it, than trying to manipulate a putter face. So, we call that period the hangover period, the torque hangover period, where your body's still searching for something to manipulate, and it takes a minute. We've got some drills online, the thumbs off drill in particular, which is exactly what it sounds like. You just hit a bunch of putts and grip it like that with your thumbs off the putter, and your body's going to start to trust that the face is staying square really quickly. Now, to answer the broomstick question,
Yeah, let's talk broomstick. Here
um,
we go.
yeah, even though it's not a new method in putting, the fact that it's now mainstream sort of is making everything start all over again. And the fact is, there really isn't curriculum. There really isn't a right way to do it. And in a lot of ways, you could make an argument that there's a bigger range of ways to get it done than there is with a conventional putter. What I tell people to do is to search some video of Bernhard Langer and then search some video of Adam Scott. And those two guys, in my opinion, represent kind of the two ends of the spectrum. So you have Bernhard, who stands about 5'8". He uses a 47-inch putter. He stands virtually straight up. And you'll see that his shoulders move, but he's not moving them. He's not driving the putter with his shoulders. He's driving the putter entirely with his right arm. And then you go all the way the other way to Adam Scott. Adam's about 6'2", and he uses a 45-inch putter, and he's used as short as 44. Bends over quite a bit, and he's driving the putter motion with his chest and back and shoulders, and then all of the space in between. So I would start, by kind of figuring out what you want to use to drive the stroke. Do you want to drive it with your right arm, or do you want to drive it with your big muscles? After you've done that, then it's time for some experimentation with the right hand. And, I've got a broom here. So, Adam kind of grips it like this, with
Yep.
these two fingers are pretty squared up with the face.
Yep.
Feels like the thumb pulls it back, the hand pushes it through.
Okay.
Besides his bigger muscles doing most of the
Yeah.
driving. Then you've got Bernhard,
Right.
who's kind of like that in between the fingers. So his palm is sort of matched up with the face and feels like he pushes it through this way.
Yep.
You've got what we're now calling the cigar grip, which is kind of how Lucas is gripping it. Hands at
Okay.
about a 45-degree angle. It's not fully this way or fully
Yep.
this way, but at about 45. And then everywhere in between. There's no right answer, and you'll feel what is most optimal for you almost right away, because the putter's so long and so heavy.
Yeah.
You're going to feel really quickly what is keeping it on plane and in control. But what I love about the broomstick method, and I've said this in some other videos and stuff, I'm starting to feel like it's athletically a more natural motion. Every other stroke sport in the game, in sports, you do with one hand, or at least one hand sort of dominating the motion. Shooting a free throw is really a one-handed motion. Sure, the left hand is there for support, just like it is on a broomstick. It's up there to support it, but it's not driving the thing. You're doing it all with your right hand. Throwing a dart, throwing it with your right hand. You're bowling with one hand. And so there's a lot of merit to this sort of rolling a ball with your right hand, that a broomstick really allows you to do. It's a lot more like bowling and ball rolling than it is like putting as we know it to be. So it's an awesome method. I'm so happy that it's now getting mainstreamed, and like that, it's not just yippers going to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's now just and I'm a good putter, and I had never messed around with any brooms until we started working with Adam, and we were just prototyping, and so I wasn't like looking for an answer. I just started messing around with them and saw that I made a bunch of putts, and I use one. I mean, just because of the job, I have to use all kinds of putters all the time, but I use one a lot.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get follow-up questions on that one too. Let's finish with these two things here real quick. This one's very simple, very straightforward. Stroker Ace, one of our forum members as well. He went to Cresswell High School, which I believe you know.
Mm-hmm.
Asked, what's your best score at Emerald Valley? What's your personal low?
66.
66. All right.
Yep.
Boom. Love it. Last question. Yeah, go ahead.
In follow up, 66 was in, he'll know what it is, one of the space age tournaments.
Space age tournaments?
Space age gas that happens out here. And it was a best ball. And me and my buddy Matt were playing together. Matt's the VP of operations here. He's also been my best friend for 20 years. Bastard shot 65. Beat me by one that day. And his personal best too. So we both shot our personal best on the same day in the same group as teammates.
How cool is
Shot a best
that?
ball
In a
60
tournament.
in the tournament. Shot a best ball 60 and won by 12 shots.
Well, I can guarantee you this: the first time I play with you at Emerald Valley, I will not shoot 65, and I will not beat you. So that's two things I can guarantee. Finish up with this. I want a story. I want to finish up with a story, preferably something tour related, and preferably something maybe that you haven't told many other people. You got to have something good for our listeners to send them home with today.
Mm. Yeah, trying to think of ones that I haven't told before.
Or just your
Um,
favorite one, maybe a really, really good one.
One that I enjoyed that actually just came up very recently was, and this is like a totally self-indulgent post, but or just self-indulgent comment, but I was at the Barracuda in 2018, and it was a really, really, really big week for us. And it was because I had a totally serendipitous run in with Vaughn Taylor at sunset on Tuesday, the Tuesday before the event, and we got him rolling it pretty good with the big directed force putter. And he happened to be staying with Bill Haas and Kevin Kisner and a handful of other guys. And he went home, told all them about this crazy putter and all the crazy things that it can do. And so the next morning, um, about a half a dozen tour pros all came up to the bag, which, you know, at the time, nothing even I couldn't have paid for that amount of interest, you know, for 30 seconds. And I'm I'm showing um, I'm showing everybody the revealer demonstration, and I'm putting their putters in there and hitting putts off the toe and off the heel, uh, and and I look up, and everybody's looking at the revealer, and they're looking at the putters, and they're fiddling around with it, and they're touching the, you know, the ones on the bag or whatever. But Kisner is just sitting there staring at me, just staring at me right in the face, and I'm just, you know, a little awkward and whatever. And I'm talking to Bill and talking to Vaughn and whatever, and he just keeps staring at me. And then everybody grabs putters and they start walking away, and he's just kind of sitting there, arms folded. He's like, "You're a little different, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess so." He's like, "All right, all right." He grabs a putter. He starts putting around. So fast forward to about 6 months ago, I told this um, story to our one of our tour guys, Brandon, and he was out there and ran into kids in Hawaii, and and Brandon asked Kisner, he's like, you know, my boss told me the story is, you know, is this true? And, you know, said, you, you know, went right at him, told him how weird he was. And he was like, yeah, it's true. And I was right, wasn't I? So that was a good one.
What about
Another
an
good
Adam Scott
one.
one or another one? Yeah, give me one more.
Well, that same week at the Barracuda, um, Scotty Scheffler was playing, so he was on the corn at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the Barracuda is sort of an off event, so a lot of the corn guys got in. And I had actually seen him play 2 years prior here in Eugene. He played in the NCAA's. He didn't contend, but I followed him for a few holes, and I could see that he was a badass. And then so a couple years later, I see him at the Barracuda, and you know, I let him know that I'd seen him play, and you know that I was a fan. Da, da, da. His dad, for whatever reason, was a big fan of L.A.B and kept hanging around the bag, and he was awesome. Um, so it's like pretty late on Wednesday night, and I see Scotty and his caddy having a putting contest, and I asked if I could join, and then just to be a smartass, I did it with putted with the revealer. I did the putting contest, you know, putting with the revealer, and like I am nobody from nowhere. I am not a professional golfer. I'm a rep with a big stupid putter. In 2 points of interest about Scotty Scheffler. Number one, he said, "Sure, absolutely,"
It's
which is
awesome.
pretty cool. He could have told me to piss off. Two, he wanted to beat my ass, like in a nothing putting competition at 7 o'clock at night against me and his caddy. Like, he's just a killer. All he knows how to do is win. And I called my buddy Courtney right after this. I called him up and I said, "Mark my words, Scotty Scheffler will be on the Ryder Cup team." This is before he even had a tour card. And sure enough, he made the next Ryder Cup team. But I mean, he's just
If you
an
could have put
absolute
money on that
badass.
prediction, then right, like
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we could talk for hours, and you and I probably will, as we often do, getting into deep stuff and stories and things. But I know people are going to have questions. Post them below. Subscribe to the channel. Do all that stuff. I will say this as a final note. Questions, information. Sam and his team are phenomenal about getting back to people. They do take customer service exceptionally seriously. So if you do have questions and you want information, post that stuff below. Reach out to me on Twitter at the GolfSpy. Reach out wherever you can find me. We'll get the information to them, and we will get information back to you. Sam, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. Like you said, you got a lot of hair products to work through and things to make sure you're looking fantastic. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Until next time, people, we out.
Thanks for having me.